One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute, who sits by many waters. With her the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries." Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The passage contains profound imagery meant to convey spiritual truths through symbols. Let's break it down and explore its interpretations, particularly in relation to paganism, idolatry, and the Catholic Church. The Great Prostitute and the Kings of the Earth. The Great Prostitute is depicted as a symbol of a corrupt and powerful entity that seduces nations and their leaders into spiritual unfaithfulness, often described as idolatry or false worship. In biblical terms, spiritual adultery refers to turning away from God and worshiping other gods or systems of belief, often associated with pagan practices, wine of her adulteries. The wine symbolizes the intoxicating influence this entity has over people and nations, drawing them into practices that stray from God's commands. These could include worship of other gods, idolatry, immorality tied to pagan rituals, worldly alliances where spiritual compromise is made for power, wealth, or pleasure, connection to paganism. In ancient times, pagan religions often involved rituals that were sexually immoral or spiritually degrading, symbolized here as adulteries. The leaders or kings of the earth committing adultery represent governments or institutions that align themselves with corrupt spiritual systems for political or economic gain. The scarlet beast. The scarlet beast represents a political and spiritual power system opposed to God. Its attributes, 7 heads, 10 horns, and blasphemous names, suggest 7 heads, often interpreted as symbolic of 7 hills, historically associated with Rome, or 7 kingdoms. 10 horns represent 10 kings or rulers who align with this power for a time. Connection to the Catholic Church? Some interpret this passage as a critique of the historical Catholic Church, particularly during periods when it wielded significant political power. This interpretation arises from the association of the 7 hills with Rome, where the Catholic Church is headquartered. Accusations of spiritual adultery tied to the Church's alliances with secular powers or perceived incorporation of pagan practices into its rituals, veneration of saints, imagery, or hierarchical structures. The blasphemous names and scarlet and purple attire are seen by some as references to the grandeur of the Church's leadership. Critique of this view. Many scholars argue that the symbolism in Revelation is broader than any one institution, reflecting all systems, religious or political, that oppose God's truth. The passage serves as a warning against compromise with worldly systems for spiritual or material gain, false worship or practices that prioritize anything above devotion to God, blending of true faith with traditions that dilute its purity. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things, and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes, and of the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns." The Inquisition. The various Inquisitions, medieval, Spanish, and Roman, are perhaps the most well-known examples. Purpose: the Inquisition was established to combat heresy, defined as teachings or practices that deviated from official church doctrine. Methods: those accused of heresy were subjected to interrogation, imprisonment, torture, and sometimes execution. Notable examples: William Tyndale, an English scholar and translator of the Bible into English, Tyndale was arrested and executed in 1536 for heresy because the Catholic Church opposed unauthorized translations of the Bible. Jan Hus, a Czech reformer who criticized church corruption and promoted access to scripture in local languages. Hus was burned at the stake in 1415 after being declared a heretic at the Council of Constance. Burning of heretical texts. Possession of unauthorized versions of the Bible was forbidden. In the 16th century, for example, owning or distributing vernacular translations of the Bible could lead to arrest and execution. Example: the Catholic Church banned many Protestant texts and translations of the Bible during the Counter-Reformation, considering them heretical persecution of non-Catholics. During periods of Catholic dominance in Europe, non-Catholics were often forced to convert or face persecution. Waldensians, this Christian movement, which emphasized personal Bible reading and rejected certain Catholic teachings, was declared heretical in the 12th century. Waldensians were massacred in multiple campaigns. Huguenots, French Protestants faced violent persecution, including the infamous St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572, when thousands were killed in France for their faith. Jews and Muslims in Spain. After the Reconquista, the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella issued the Alhambra Decree, 1492, expelling Jews who refused to convert to Catholicism. Similarly, Muslims were forced to convert or leave. Post-Nero period and early Christians. While Nero's persecution was primarily Roman and predated the Catholic Church, later emperors like Constantine and Theodosius I merged Roman governance with Christian orthodoxy. After Christianity became the state religion, heresies, as defined by the Catholic Church, were suppressed by force. Cathars, this dualistic sect in southern France, was eradicated during the Albigensian Crusade, 1209–1229, sanctioned by Pope Innocent III. Many Cathars were killed for rejecting Catholic authority. Galileo Galilei. Although not executed, Galileo's trial by the Roman Inquisition in 1633 exemplifies suppression of dissenting views. He was found vehemently suspect of heresy for supporting heliocentrism, which contradicted the Church's interpretation of Scripture. End times prophecy, particularly from a futurist perspective. Some believe that the Catholic Church playing with the Islamic faith could play a significant role in a global system of deception and control. This view is often linked to Revelation 17–18 and suggests the following scenario. Formation of a global religious system. The Catholic Church, or a comparable religious entity, is seen as central to unifying world religions under a false spiritual system. This system, referred to as Babylon the Great, would prioritize human authority and worldly power over true worship of God. Persecution of true believers. In this interpretation, the Church could collaborate with political powers to enforce conformity, suppressing dissent and persecuting those who remain faithful to biblical teachings. Enforcement of worship and control. Revelation 13 describes a beast that forces all people to worship an image or receive a mark. Some speculate that a corrupt religious institution could work with political entities to enforce this system, punishing those who resist. Deception through signs and wonders. The Church might use miraculous signs, real or counterfeit, to deceive nations into following false teachings, similar to how idolatrous systems seduced people in ancient times. The beast, which you saw, once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. The inhabitants of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. The phrase "the beast, which once was, now is not, and yet will come" from Revelation 17 verse 8 is a mysterious and symbolic description of the beast's nature, often interpreted in different ways depending on the eschatological framework. Here's a simplified explanation. Once was, this suggests that the beast, representing a corrupt empire, ruler, or system, existed in the past. Now is not. At the time of the vision, the beast's power was not active or visible. Yet will come, the beast will rise again in the future, re-establishing its influence and power in a significant way. Interpretations. Political or religious power. The beast could represent a specific empire, the Roman Empire, or a global religious/political system that rises, falls, and is revived in the end times. Some link this to the Catholic Church, suggesting it plays a role in the revival of a deceptive world system. Deception and Antichrist. The beast is often associated with the Antichrist or a global leader who embodies opposition to God. This individual or system will astonish people because of its apparent resurrection or revival of power. Spiritual and worldly deception. The astonishment of the people reflects their awe and admiration for this seemingly unstoppable power, leading many to follow and worship it. In some end times interpretations, the Catholic Church is linked to the great prostitute in Revelation 17, which represents a corrupt religious system. The 7 hills mentioned in the chapter are often interpreted as a reference to Rome, where the Catholic Church is headquartered. The belief is that in the end times, this religious system will unite world religions into a false, corrupt spiritual authority, work with global political powers to enforce control and suppress those who remain faithful to God, deceive people with false miracles and teachings, leading them away from true worship. This view sees the Catholic Church as playing a central role in this deception, based on its historical influence and the symbolism in Revelation. Connection to end times. This verse underscores the deceptive nature of the beast, which manipulates people through awe and fear. The cycle of its rise, fall, and revival is a warning about placing faith in worldly systems rather than God. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come, but when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. The beast who once was, and now is not, is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. This passage describes a sequence of 7 kings, or kingdoms. 5 have fallen, 1 is present, and 1 is yet to come but will rule briefly. The beast represents an 8th king, connected to the 7, who rises to power but ultimately faces destruction. It symbolizes a final, rebellious world power destined for judgment. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. The 7 kings mentioned in Revelation 17 verse 10 are often interpreted as representing 7 kingdoms or empires that have historically ruled over the world, especially in relation to Israel and biblical prophecy. Here's a common interpretation of these 7 kings. 5 have fallen. These 5 kingdoms are typically seen as past empires that were powerful but have since fallen. Egypt, 1st kingdom. Assyria, 2nd kingdom. Babylon, 3rd kingdom. Medo-Persia, 4th kingdom. Greece, 5th kingdom. 1 is, this is often interpreted as Rome, the empire that was in power at the time the book of Revelation was written, around the 1st century AD. The other has not yet come. This refers to a future kingdom or world power that has not yet arisen, often interpreted as a final world empire before the end times, sometimes associated with the rise of the Antichrist. The beast who once was, and now is not, is an 8th king. This is often understood as a revived empire or kingdom, sometimes linked to the Roman Empire, or a new form of it, which will rise again in the end times but ultimately be destroyed. This interpretation connects the 7 kings to historical and future world powers, with the beast being the final and most destructive ruler in the end times. But the general theme remains a progression of empires that culminate in a final, destructive kingdom. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. Here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. Then the angel said to me, "The waters you saw, where the prostitute sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked, they will eat her flesh and burn her with fire." Book of Revelation, that America might fit the description of the prostitute or Babylon the Great in Revelation 17-18, due to its global influence, materialism, and perceived moral decline. The prostitute is generally seen as a symbol of a corrupt, idolatrous system that leads nations away from true worship of God. For God has put it into their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority, until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Revelation 17-18 describes the fall of Babylon the Great, symbolizing a corrupt religious, political, or economic system. Chapter 17 focuses on the prostitute seated on many waters, representing a global influence over nations and peoples. The beast and 10 kings will turn on her, destroy her, and fulfill God's judgment. Chapter 18 depicts Babylon's destruction as a judgment for its greed, immorality, and corruption, with nations and merchants mourning its downfall. The chapters highlight God's ultimate triumph over evil systems. The Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was the Jewish ruling council in Judea during the Second Temple period. It was composed of priests, elders, and scribes, led by the high priest. The Sanhedrin had religious authority and limited judicial power under Roman rule, the Pharisees and Sadducees. These were the primary religious sects during Jesus' time. The Pharisees were known for their strict adherence to oral and written Torah laws, and were influential among the common people. The Sadducees, often associated with the priestly class, controlled the temple in Jerusalem and collaborated more closely with Roman authorities, key role in Jesus' death. The Gospels describe how certain members of the Sanhedrin accused Jesus of blasphemy for his teachings and claims of divinity. Matthew 26 verses 63-66. However, the actual execution of Jesus was carried out by the Romans, as crucifixion was a Roman method of execution. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, authorized it, John 19 verse 16. Today's modern Catholic Church. The term Ashkenazi comes from a region associated with Ashkenaz, mentioned in the Bible, Genesis 10 verse 3, which later became associated with parts of Europe. Ashkenazi Jewry developed in Europe during the early Middle Ages, long after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE and the dispersion of the Jewish people. Latter to claim religion as Jew, following the Jesuit order to service the Catholics. The Catholic Church traces its origins to Jesus Christ and the Apostles in the 1st century AD. According to Catholic tradition, Jesus appointed Peter as the leader of his church, Matthew 16 verse 18, making him the first pope. The Church gradually developed its structure and teachings as Christianity spread through the Roman Empire. Key milestones include 313 AD. The Edict of Milan legalized Christianity in the Roman Empire under Emperor Constantine. 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea established foundational doctrines like the Nicene Creed. 380 AD, Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire under Emperor Theodosius I. Over centuries, the Catholic Church grew into a central institution in Europe, shaping theology, culture, and politics. Its name, Catholic, meaning universal, reflects its goal to unite Christians under a single faith into a one-world church order as a government and religious section. The church is worth billions in money, real estate, and gold, silver. Until next post, Shalom.